Workforce development is one of the most critical keys to success in economic development. Back when we started in economic development in the early 90s, it was a money game. It was all about who could throw the biggest pile of cash at a project, and if you had the money to be able to recruit the businesses that were looking in your community, you could often win the game just with the largest pile of cash. Well, those days are over. You still do need incentives in certain cases, and you still need to have money in your coffers to do deals and to make land and building projects happen. But today, it is all about workforce development. It doesn't matter how much money you have if a business can't come to your town and find the labor that they need. And we are in a tighter and tighter and tighter labor market across the United States, and I don't have to tell you that COVID didn't help that much. And so what I want to talk about today are some of the tools and some of the examples that I've seen across the country that I want to bring to you today to consider for your own community. Some of these things are internal things, and some of these are external things for your community. But I hope you'll find some takeaways in this presentation today and consider taking a few notes on a few things that you might be worth giving a whirl in your community regarding workforce development. So, this is what I call the 8 pillars of economic development. The community development side of things being the things that are the preparation parts for your community. So I like to think of economic development as an overarching umbrella, and underneath that umbrella are 2 components. The foundational piece, which is community development, all the things that your community has to have in some kind of semblance of success, and then the business development, the going out and recruiting, the BR&E programs, visiting your local businesses, helping entrepreneurs start new businesses, and then of course tourism goes in the business development piece also. But for today's purposes, I want to talk about workforce development, and we're actually going to talk a little bit about BR&E and how BR&E fits into your workforce development situation. And this is for you, regardless of what your position or your title is in your community. If you're the economic development professional or community development, or if you have another role in your co-op or in your community, there's a little something here for everybody for takeaways. All right, clicker's a little slow, but we'll go here. Okay, I think it skipped a slide. Am I not pointing at the right thing? There we go. Okay. Maybe we need a new battery in this thing. Okay. There we go. Current workforce. Okay, so let's talk about your current workforce in your community and future workforce. We'll talk about students and kind of youth retention in a minute here. So what are some of the needs of your current workforce? Well, your current workforce is looking for new skills. There are an extraordinary amount of people who left the workforce during COVID. Last year alone, in 2021, 1 in 4 workers left their jobs. Left, quit, retired, 1 in 4. That's a pretty significant number. And so, we'll talk about what some of these folks who left are looking for. But it also doesn't help. So those are folks that, in most cases made the decision to leave the workplace. We also have 10,000 baby boomers retiring every single day. From the time you got up this morning to the time you show up at the reception tonight, our country will have lost another 10,000 baby boomers to retirement. So, and tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day for the foreseeable future. So what does that mean for you? It means that this situation isn't getting any better with workforce. It means you're going to have to get more and more clever with the tools that you bring to bear. So with new skills, You have to think about what are the skills that my community needs. And we'll talk in a little bit about how to determine specific skill set needs. But probably everyone in this room now has heard the term the Great Resignation. It is for real, and we're never going back to the time, in any of our lifetimes, we're never going back to a situation where worker supply is larger than worker demand. It is the businesses that have to compete for labor, not people that have to compete for jobs so much anymore. So, last October, 2021, a job search site called JobList took a big survey nationwide, and of the people who didn't quit their jobs last year, 73% of people in the workforce are actively thinking about quitting their jobs. They're actually talking to people about it, looking for new jobs. So that means 73% of the people in your community are likely looking for new opportunities. So how do we develop new skills to meet their needs? Also looking for more flexibility. One thing that COVID has taught us is that we don't have to be in the office anymore necessarily for every single job that we thought we did, right? PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the top 4 accounting firms in our country, announced in October that as of the beginning of this year, all 40,000 of their employees can now work from anywhere they want. That's just one company, y'all. 40,000 workers at PricewaterhouseCoopers can now choose any community that they want to live in. So what does that mean for you? It means that your economic development team can't just be focusing on recruiting companies. You got to be focused on recruiting warm bodies. How do you get some of those 40,000, by the way, pretty well-paid PricewaterhouseCoopers people? How do you get some of those to move to your community and choose your community as a place that they want to continue working for that company and maybe work out of their home or some co-working space? So are you focused on the recruitment of talent as well as businesses? Another company, Salesforce, announced just a couple months ago, they made a formal statement saying that the 9-to-5 office environment is officially dead. That's a pretty big statement. And so if you think about office space, what's going to happen to those 40,000 employees at PricewaterhouseCoopers, their Class A office space? That is a lot of abandoned commercial office space. Is there any of that in your community? How do you combat that? Better pay and benefits. One of the things that we've realized during COVID is that you're not going to be able to go back to finding folks at minimum wage, in certain companies that have always been able to pay minimum wage are not going to be able to pay minimum wage anymore because the worker has a choice. They can go somewhere else. I have a 20-year-old niece who's in college. She works part-time at Tiff's Treats. Do y'all have that here? Like where they deliver hot cookies and cold milk to your front door. It's like a florist, but with cookies and milk. Yeah. Somebody needs to open up we do some entrepreneurial development and get somebody to open a Tiff's Treats. So she's a college student, and this is her little part-time job. And she used to work doing data entry and sales stuff at a real estate office last year in college. Well, they were paying her $15 an hour. Well, she can make $20 an hour delivering cookies. So, what does that mean for the job market and the tough decisions that employers are going to have to make in a brand new economy? So we'll talk about careers. Everybody's looking for new careers. We said 73% of people are looking for a new job. A lot of those are actually looking for new careers too. And this was shocking to me. A study by Mindshare just a few months ago interviewed people at all different ages in the workplace about why they don't want to work there anymore. Why is it 73% of people don't want to continue their job? 66% of millennials and 81% of Gen Z workers said because of mental health. So millennials are age 26 to 41. So a lot of us think of millennials as kind of young, but they're kind of in the prime, middle working age, especially the upper end. I mean, millennials at 41 can have grandchildren. We don't think of millennials as being great coming into grandparent age, but they really are. And then we've got Gen Z, 81%. So these are kids who've gone through high school. They didn't get high school graduation because of COVID. They are, a lot of people really struggled going to college during COVID. So what are their problems with mental health? They're in a different situation because they don't have the tools that have equipped some of the past generations. So what does that mean for your community? How do you say we value mental health in our community for our workforce? And sadly, Gen Z is likely poised to be the first generation ever in the United States history to not be wealthier than their parents. Student loan debt, wages that have not kept up with the price of cars and homes and consumer goods. Gen Z will likely not make the money that their parents made. So it begs the question, what does that mean for the next generation after Gen Z? Have we lost the days where our children can actually have a better life than we have? These are some things to think about for your community. Future workforce. Now, future workforce are our kids in school primarily. So let's talk about what this really means for your expectations here. High school students, and we'll talk about middle school students in a minute too, but they don't know what all the opportunities are for them out there. And there's so many jobs that haven't even been created yet that we can't teach them certain skill sets because those jobs haven't been created yet. Raise your hand if you knew in high school you're going to be doing the job you're doing today. Come on, not one of y'all, not one single person? We got one hand over here, one hand, all right. Why is that? Why did we not know in high school that we were going to be doing this job? Nobody came to my high school and said, let me tell you about what it is to be an economic developer. Well, we have to do a better job as leaders. We have to do a better job today of exposing kids to different options and opportunities. That means hands-on immersion opportunities. I'll show you some examples. But we also have to have some serious talks with parents and teachers about what this means for their children in the trade side, on the career and technical education stuff. So it has been true for many generations now, and I don't want to generalize too much, but it has been true for several generations that for a lot of people, the main key to success has been a 4-year college university experience. Would you agree? I'm probably not the only person in the room whose parents said, oh, you will go to college. A lot of parents have said that over the last several generations. And so for a long time, that was the key to success. You knew if you could just get a college degree that you could at least get some interviews, right? There are places where you couldn't even get an interview without a college degree. But folks, those days are over too. We now have so many careers and so many opportunities that do not require a 4-year degree education. And some of these are really powerful, good, high-paying, quality jobs. But not enough parents have been told about this because we've been drilled that a 4-year degree is the only or the main or chief, key to success here. And so we'll talk some specifics about that, but I think that we have to get realistic with children, with parents, and with teachers about opportunities that lie out in the real world that don't require a 4-year. Now, of course, don't get me wrong, don't misunderstand me. We still need kids to go to 4-year university experience. I don't want anybody operating on me that hasn't been through all school and medical school. And I don't want anybody doing my taxes that hasn't been to a CPA. So we need those careers, but we need to expand in our minds what that really means. And then, of course, the cool factor. There's a misperception still, even though Mike Rowe has been doing dirty jobs, shows for a long time, there's still a misperception about what it means to work in the trades and what does it mean to have a career in technical education. So equipping your community with new skills that serve your current workforce, and then what do you need to do to prepare yourself for the cool factor for future workforce. Okay. See, I don't know why it keeps jumping. I think you need new batteries. Okay, so a few things to think about here. Skill set development. The preparedness of your community is going to be what dictates whether or not you're going to be able to fulfill these needs. Workforce, talent pipelines. What does that look like in your community? Do you have some type of way for a student to say, I think I might fit in here, and how do we get them along a track? And I'm not talking about a steady, rigid career pathway that they can't escape from like some other countries do, but are you exposing younger and younger future workers to some of the careers that are out there for them? We have to think about this from not an educator standpoint, but we have to figure out what it is that our employers demand from the community. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, it was probably about 12 or 13 years ago, one of my clients, you may have heard of Brenham, Texas. It's where they make Bluebell ice cream. Well, they got a brand new economic developer 12 or 13 years ago. He was a young guy. He was new to the industry, and he had started building his BR&E program, and he went and called on the CEO of Bluebell. And he said, typical BR&E questions. Hey, we're here to help. How can we help you? What keeps you up at night? And the CEO of Bluebell said, I'm having an extraordinary expense having to relocate welders from Houston into Brenham, which is about an hour and a half outside of Houston. And he said, well, what do you need? And he said, I need welders to work on the ice cream manufacturing machines. I need machine operator, maintenance people, and I need some CNC machinists to cut parts and, program CNC machines and program parts. And he said, and we don't grow any of them locally. So what I have to do is I have to find welders in Houston, pay their relocation costs for them and their family, and it's getting to be pretty expensive. Why don't we grow welders in our hometown? And the young economic developer said, well, good question. So I just happened to be the fortunate facilitator. He called in. He said, we got to have a serious discussion. Would you come facilitate this meeting for me? I said, yeah, sure. So I'm telling you this story because I want you to see, I'm not saying this is easy, but I'm telling you how simple this process was. We literally invited the top 10 employees in this small community to come in the room. We put them all on this side. We had CEOs and HR managers on one side of the room. On this side of the room, we put all the educators. We put the school superintendent, a couple school board members, principals, and we brought in Blinn College, which at the time was a liberal arts two-year college. Brought them in, sat them on one side of the room, and then in the back of the room, we put like the state workforce development reps and, state resources. I had 2 easels, and I turned to all the employers, and I said, tell me what skill sets you need in here to, in your businesses. And we listed them all: welders, machinists, maintenance, HVAC, mechanics, all these things on this side. Great. Then I turned to all the educators, and I said, tell me all the skill sets that you're producing: sociology, psychology, landscaping, architecture, accounting. Guess what, y'all? Not one single skill set lined up on both easels. That was pretty telling. Not only is the community unnecessarily forcing their local industry to import talent, they're also inadvertently exporting their greatest asset, because there's no jobs for sociologists or accountants or landscaping. So all of those jobs are leaving after they train them. So literally, the CEO of Bluebell said, do you suppose you could grow some welders over there at that liberal arts college of yours? And the chancellor said, well, we'll give it a whirl. And that is how it started. And they got the support from their board of regents. They built a career in technical education. They built those exact specific training modules that were listed on that flip chart easel. And 4 or 5 years later, they were open and producing those. And then 4 or 5 years after that, they got the governor's award for for that year's greatest workforce development program in the state of Texas. So it's not easy, but that's how simple it is. Are there businesses in your community that you need to have that discussion with? And are your education facilities producing the skill sets that the business owners, the business managers are saying that they need? There has to be some kind of connectivity there. We can't just keep producing skill sets in our high schools and in our junior colleges and our community colleges that don't match up with the local needs. And I'll tell you one more quick story. In 2017, I was at a conference, and it was a site selection panel, and they gave their presentation about projects they had worked all throughout 2017. And after their presentation was over, someone in the audience said, that's great information, but I have a question. I want to know, when the companies that hired you to help them find their next location, when it got down to 2 final communities, I want to know, what was the tipping point? What made your businesses choose community 1 over community 2? The first site selection consultant stood up and she said, well, that's easy. Every client that I had this year chose communities in their final choice that had workforce development programs and pipelines that began in middle school. Then the next site selection consultant stood up and he said, same thing with me. All my clients chose communities that had workforce development education pipeline that started in 6th grade, junior high, middle school. Third guy stood up, said the exact same thing. It was a unanimous, across the board decision with all their companies why they chose the final choice, because of workforce development programs that began before high school. So what does this mean? This means that if you weren't producing talent pipelines in 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade back in 2017, you're behind the curve. That's some food for thought. It shocked a lot of people in the room. So how do we start having conversations about careers? Golly. Sorry, y'all. I'm so sorry when it's not working. Okay. So how do you do this? You got to have partners. So here's a list of some people that I want you to think about as bringing in for your partnerships to have some of these discussions. Employers are above educators because they are the ones. Y'all have heard that southern saying, you got to dance with the one who brung you? These people brung you to the dance. You have to take care of them. You have to work with your local industries to find out what their specific needs are, and we should be helping them build it and deliver it to them. So that's why we talk to employers first, then we have some serious conversations with our educators. So school superintendents need to be on this conversation, your career and technical education people, teachers, counselors, and administrators. So let's talk about this for a second. What does every teacher have? A college degree. So what does this mean? It means there's no teachers or counselors in your school who can stand up and speak from an empirical standpoint the value of not going to a four-year university. Right? So not only do we have to talk to parents about the opportunities that lie for our children without going to four-year university, but we also have to have this discussion with teachers, because teachers are pushing kids to go into college every day. And I can promise you, we're not doing any kid any favors when we force a child who could have been successful in a career outside of a four-year university, some type of trade or workforce skill set development, when we force them to go and get $100,000 worth of college debt, and then they end up not doing the job anyway, doing a job that they want to do later. So we have to have this discussion with teachers. Whose job is that? There's nobody's job to go talk to teachers about the benefits of not going to college. So it has to be us. It has to be your economic developers. It has to be you, the community leaders. You have to start having these discussions in your circles, at Rotary, at Kiwanis, on the golf course, Lions Club, Masonic Lodge, Bunko, church, wherever you have discussions with people you love and care about, we got to start having this discussion about the benefits of thinking differently about education. Students are influenced by people who have, play a role in their life. So back to parents and back to teachers and back to counselors again. Talking to economic development professionals, many of which are in this room today, can start this discussion saying, I can promise you that you have career opportunities here because we have businesses here that need people like you who need skills that you might be interested in developing. And then, of course, local and state governments. We'll talk in a minute about some examples of some state governments that are helping that, but use your resources, use your state workforce development folks to help you craft some new opportunities. And then, of course, the South Carolina Power Team is here to help you with that too. James just mentioned the South Carolina Power Team reimbursement grant. Ask about that. The South Carolina Power Team is here to help you. They're here to help you with economic development education, workforce development education, workforce development strategic planning, all those things that he mentioned. Use your partners. Here are some of the tools to consider. And this is great because every single person in this room could do one of these or more. I started off as a student intern. When I was in college, the local power company, I grew up in Louisiana, the local power company gave me an opportunity in economic development, and here I am 29 years later still doing the same stuff. Because one person took a chance on a student intern, I stand before you. Whose life could you change? What trajectory of what student in your community could you change by you offering them an internship? Think about that. Externship. What's that? That's where teachers can come and learn with you. Maybe it's just a week-long shadowing thing, but an externship is where you bring a teacher in, and by the way, we don't even pay them enough, right? So you don't ask them to come for free to learn. You pay them, let them sit there for a week and learn what it is that you do at your job, at your co-op, at your community. When's the last time you invited a teacher in to come see what you do? Mentoring, that's a pretty big commitment to mentor a student for a year or so, but there are people in the room that probably do mentor some kids. Shadowing, that's a 1-week commitment. Is there a week in your summer where you could have a student or a teacher just come shadow you around? You take them to your meetings. You don't have to show them your W-9s, but your W-2s, but you talk to them about if you were to become what I am, this is the education you would need, and here's what you would need for, here's what you could expect salary-wise. Every person in this room could speak at Career Day. If your community does not have a Career Day, your organization could start one. There's no rule that says the school has to be the owner of the Career Day. I know plenty of economic development organizations that own the Career Day because you have a relationship with the employers and the educators. So if one doesn't exist, why not create one? And then, of course, every person in this room could donate 15 minutes of your time, 30 minutes of your time to talk about your career at your local Career Day. Imagine how many lives we could change if every person in this room decided to pick one or more of these things and do it this year. You could change the whole trajectory of what's going on in South Carolina. And then plant tours. Are you working with your plant managers, with business owners to help allow tours for parents, students, and educators to come through and see, that manufacturing is not dirty, that these are good quality jobs? Now here's just an example of some average salaries I pulled. Now, full disclosure, a lot of these were from Charleston because not all these jobs are available in every single rural community. But just kind of an overview, quick snapshot here. Those are pretty well-paying jobs, would you agree? I have some friends with PhDs that don't make some of this. So the amount of education and the type of education doesn't always equate salaries. Anybody paid a plumber lately? How about a car mechanic? These are not shameful jobs. These are amazing jobs. They're wonderful jobs. And we have to start having conversations more and more and more about these kinds of opportunities for our kids. Okay, I'm going to share with you a couple of examples. 5, actually, to be exact. Okay, I don't have a ton of time left, so I'm going to share with you real quickly 5 examples of things that you can Google and learn more about, and I think these are replicatable in a lot of your communities. Number 1, Fitzgerald, Georgia, not too far from here. They just created this program last year or 2 years ago called Flex. Fitzgerald Leadership and Entrepreneur Experience. It's like a Shark Tank experience. The Chamber owns this, by the way. The Chamber and their business members created this. It is 15 weeks after school, so it's an extracurricular thing. Students can sign up and agree to go through this 15-week education program about how to start, run, and scale a business. They actually help the students start. This is not a mock-up. This is they start real businesses. They go to the Secretary of State's office and file business licenses. And then they teach the kids all about accounting and hiring and production and all these things. And then they compete. At different stages, they compete for moving on to the next level. And then at the end of the competition, one high school student is given $5,000 to help grow their business. And this all comes out of the Chamber. And they partner with local businesses to teach soft skills, encourage entrepreneurship, and getting involved. Here's a quick picture. As you can see, that was just a couple days ago. So this is a high school student. She started this business called Cake It with Chloe, and she makes cakes and cupcakes and muffins, and she caters them and delivers them all throughout the community. She is a high school senior, and she won the competition 2 days ago, and her experience through Flex has earned her a full ride scholarship to Mercer University. She just found out. She'll be going there in the fall. Could you do this? The local organizations like Rotary said, we will showcase your businesses to our members. Is there an opportunity for you to do a Flex? Number 2, state of Maryland. This is very recent too. They just announced that this week. The entire state of Maryland went through all 38,000 job descriptions at the state And they have now deemed 19,000 of their 38,000 jobs no longer require a college degree. Because frankly, they never really did, right? So they're taking out the college degree requirement out of 19,000 job descriptions at the state of Maryland. What is that going to do? It's going to make a lot of people flock to Maryland for state jobs. You are now eligible for those jobs because of your military experience, your work experience, your courses you've been through, community college, and they're calling it STAR, Skilled Through Alternative Routes. So it made me curious to look about Google around the country to see how many people are skilled through alternative routes. In the United States, 66% of our rural workers are qualified for some of these jobs, but they don't have a college degree. 66%. And then military, 61% of veterans, 61% of black workers, 55% of Hispanic workers are qualified for these type jobs but don't have a degree. Could you do something like this in your community? This doesn't have to be a state of South Carolina program. This is something you could replicate. You could have these conversations with your local businesses on your BR&E visits, right? How many jobs are you requiring to have a 4-year degree that don't really need to be? And number 3. Golly, number 4. 3, stay there. Okay, this is very fresh too. The state of Mississippi just announced that this week. It was a House bill in Mississippi, the Comprehensive Career and Technical Education Reform Act. And this is going to the governor's desk. This is probably going to be signed by the governor of Mississippi this week or next week. What they're doing is they're going to start showing kids kindergarten. Remember what the site selection consultant said earlier than high school? They're going to start showing kids career opportunities in pipelines K through 12 in Mississippi starting soon. How are you going to be able to compete against that? Think about it. Also, the state of Mississippi is requiring that the Department of Education work with the Community College Board, probably never had a partnership there, to ensure alignment of career and technical education courses across the public system. And now the state of Mississippi has a workforce development program called Accelerate Mississippi, and the state legislature is charging that organization with measuring the ROI of this new bill. So they're going to be tracking this. And then finally, so this is something you could replicate too, right? This doesn't have to be a state thing either. This is something that you could replicate in your community. We could start talking about career. You could have a school superintendent that gets on board with this. And then Wichita Falls, this is a great example. In the panhandle of Texas, they have a Hiring Our Heroes program inside the Chamber, and the Chamber and Economic Development Organization are together in this city. And what they do is the Chamber is the job matching agent. So they talk to all their military, active military in their community, and they have generals that serve on the Chamber board, and they do matchmaking for their military spouses, help them find jobs. And guess who's gotten on board? Southwest Airlines, YMCA, Farmers Insurance, Boeing, Owens Corning, and John Deere have all said, sign me up to hire military spouses. I'm interested in hiring those. So there are 8 military installations in South Carolina. You may have one in your community. You may have one nearby. But even if you don't have one of the 8 military installations in South Carolina in your community, you have veterans, and you have veteran spouses. What have you created? What could you create to help serve them and their job needs? And then finally, number 5, this is a program that was started by the Tuscaloosa Chamber several years ago. Now it's called West Alabama Chamber. But they have a program called Worlds of Work. I encourage you to YouTube and Google this. What they do, now they have an East Alabama program and a West Alabama program. It's hard to see, but they have a whole expo hall, and they have all their employers bring in these heavy equipment things, and kids get to put on gloves and put on helmets and safety glasses, and they get to touch and move things around. But they also list the salary range. It's hard to see up here, but it's like what the occupation is, what the education requirement is. Notice how many say high school diploma, and then they have the salary range. So every kid can walk station to station and see how much they could make if they were to operate that backhoe or that piece of machinery there. Last thing I want to say on this is that they also bring in the city public works departments. They bring in the big equipment from their municipalities, so it's not just businesses that come, but the kids get hand-on experiences there. So this is a whole nother level of career day, wouldn't you say? When they're bringing in 18-wheelers and backhoes, and the utility companies bringing in huge lineman trucks. So some food for thought. These are 5 that I think are replicatable. These are 5 that I think you should take a look at and consider for your community. So, to wrap up here, what is it that your community can do? Can you talk to teachers? Can you talk to parents? Can you expose kids to more opportunities? Could you do an internship? Could you do an apprenticeship? Could you do a shadowing? There's more to be done, and I hope you found some tools today to be able to bring some of these things to your community. Thank you for having me. There's my contact information. Like James said, you can contact me anytime, but let your local cooperative know if you want some help in this, and or Caroline or James, and they'll be happy to bring some of these assistance to you. So thank you so much.